by taking you through the steps and trusting the process. I got there after my first year.
Hey everyone, and welcome to RCA's new Business Culture podcast series. My name is Rob Arnold, founder of RCA. This podcast is all about learning from those in business who have shaped world-class business cultures, how they did it, and what they faced along the way in building these great cultures. We look forward to sharing their insights, tips, and tricks with you. In this episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with Scotty Fraser, one of South Africa's leading financial advisors. Scotty and his team have built up an impressive client base over the last 7 years. More significantly though, is his story of how he got to where he is today. He generously shares a rather personal journey with us in this podcast. Thanks also to our friends at Spaces for providing the venue for this interview. Scotty, lovely to have you here, my man. Thank you for your time. It's great to have you on our podcast journey. And I think what I'm very much looking forward to, I think, is what you've done over a certain amount of time in growing your individual brand, and we'll get onto that a bit later. But I think to start with, for our listeners, just to get a bit of context as to your story and where things started and where you're now.
Cheers, Rob. Anytime. So my journey started, I got the opportunity to go overseas straight out of university at Marty's. So I went and did my gap year, which was pretty addictive. I ended up doing 6 of them, skiing in the winter and playing cricket in Amsterdam in the summer. But then at the age of 25, you kind of think, okay, time to grow up. I came back here, set up shop in Cape Town. I had some euros. I got a job to kind of have a job and pursue this idea of Jerry Maguire, sports sponsorship, athlete management, which I loved. But then in 1 month, my whole world flipped upside down. The job I had said, don't come Monday, we're restructuring. Landlord had sold the place. I had to be out the flat at the end of the month. A girlfriend of 3 years broke up with me out the blue. I punctured 2 tires on my car. Sure. You've only got 1 spare tire in the back. I broke my cricket bat, which was a tragedy for a sportsman. Mm-hmm. But all of those were so insignificant because on the 11th of the 11th, 2011, my dad had a stroke. So suddenly that was real. I can get a new girlfriend, a new house, a new job. My dad did survive. However, he was bedridden. He couldn't speak, he couldn't swallow. It was difficult. So then you kind of think, all right, well, he's in hospital. Does he even have medical aid? Okay, yeah, we got medical aid. And then you're calling all pockets. What does he have? What? Once we had gathered everything, that was our reality. And now how do we move forward? Shortly after that, I got involved in the financial services industry, because now I'm dealing with medical aid, I'm dealing with insurance. How do retirement annuities pay out and. It gave me 7 years because, the old school group benefits of you retire at 65, you live on your retirement until you're 70 and then you die. That narrative isn't relevant anymore, but in 7 years' time, my dad was going to be 65. So now what? Okay, I've got absolute purpose and clarity. Get involved so that I can help my mum and share the story that I'm chatting about now to others and help them understand the mystery of insurance. And how else do you do it? You go to someone in the industry and say, please teach me, please mentor me, please show me as a predictable journey as possible, because working backwards from 7 years down to now, sure. How do you take on an extra expense of X per month over and above what you're currently living on? Okay, well, if that's what it is, that's what it is. And after the first year, I was 20 Rand out. Sure. Yeah, so I thought, okay, well, there's my belief. Yeah. They said to me, go out and have coffee with people. I said, really? Is that it? That's pretty simple. Mm-hmm. However, the topic is not easy. To talk about insurance and cancer and the emotional stuff isn't easy because you're carrying baggage. And I said, I don't care. I've got my story because it's first-hand example. Yeah. And I'm 7 years later, I'm still doing it and loving it.
Yeah. It's a very authentic beginning to to that part of your life or that journey?
Yeah, it really was. Look, another learning point was you get the training and the accreditation, all that is quite narrow-minded.
Yeah.
And guess what? That's what you're taught. That's what you're going to do. So I went and did it, and it served me well. However, industries evolve. No matter what industry, this one was evolving, and I only learned the lesson look, it was almost 5 years later that my dad passed, which, pros and cons. It gave us 5 years to get his ducks in a row, to structure his finances correctly, which is exactly what I do now with clients, is structure their stuff now correctly in the good times.
Yeah.
So that learning point came on the 21st of December when I did my planning, because my dad's life cover paid out to my mum, and I had to say, all right, Mum, this money now has to last 10 years, 15 years. You're 57 years old. It's got to last forever.
Yeah.
So I did my planning as best I knew how, but I just thought, I need some reassurance. Let me ask one person who knows investments better than anyone, Daniel. So I said, Dan, please have a look at my calculations here. And he said, why this, why that, and dissected it pretty nicely and so simply. I said, Dan, tell you what, like the watch, I don't need to know the mechanics of a watch. Just tell me the time. I trust you implicitly. You have it. You invest it. Look after my mom. That's it. And that was the catalyst of our partnership now, where we specialized.
Cool. Yeah, we'll chat about that in a little bit later. But it's obviously been a journey of ups and downs in those 7 years, or in terms of that part of your life now. Speak to us about some of those moments along the way that have really, taught you possibly the most from the last 7 years. What have been some of those occurrences, I guess, that have really allowed you to go to the next level in terms of things that have happened?
I think stage of life is an important one. You're 25, you're starting out with all your mates. Again, that association.
Yeah.
If you're associating yourself with all your mates who play cricket and hockey and you're jolling with, at that stage of your life, that's what you're operating in. But as we've grown and got older, those guys can now afford a little bit more. Yeah. They've bought a house, they've got married, they've had kids. So suddenly you do have to structure it accordingly, and the how do I put it? The earning capacity is better because guys can invest more, and then word of mouth gets around.
So it's essentially, I guess, about understanding your client, your customer, in their, I suppose, in the context of their life journey, and knowing where they are at that given time, I suppose, when it comes to your recommendations and
just being there, really. You stay in touch. Nowadays with technology, you can't hide. It's so transparent, so embrace it. It's great. You're there for your client. If he messages you, he phones you, emails you, if he likes your Facebook post, that's cool. You stay in touch.
Sure. Yeah. And tell me, as your client base has grown and you guys have become more and more of a force in the market, how have you been able to keep that personalized service and that, I suppose, keeping tabs on it on your growing client base? What's been your sort of strategy with that?
Look, the industry is wanting us to stay in touch more with our clients. You have to, almost compulsory, and for compliancy, you've got to do your annual reviews.
Yes.
Again, it comes down to technology.
Yeah.
You can stay in touch with, the old days of sitting down for an hour every morning and making phone calls. Of the 10 people you phone, 2 of them answer your phone call. And then you go, well, I've just wasted an hour. I've spoken to 2 people and neither of them want to have a meeting. Well, now what? Whereas you can send out a message on email to 100 people and wait for them to reply. And when they reply, then you know that they're online. You can do it on WhatsApp. You can do it on social media, any platform really, where you can just say, hi guys, as a blanket, who's available this week? And they will message you at their convenience.
Okay, so it's about being a bit more smart about the process as well. Okay. And what I've admired about you over the last decade or so is the fact that you've built a very strong personal brand. You've kind of been very conscious about what it takes to sort of build up that reputation amongst a growing network. Any tips and tricks that you can share with our listeners as to, I suppose, what you followed over that time to build that audience, and what you sort of executed upon?
Before Facebook, before social media, and I was doing my 7 years living abroad, it was so cool to stay in touch with mom and dad and my sister. And of course, that email that went out was almost like a journal entry. Yeah. Hey, this is what I did today with cricket and skiing, and these are the people who I met. Okay. You know, I was fortunate to meet affluent South Africans who could afford a skiing holiday, and they're there with their family, no work stress, enjoying themselves. Yeah. So you add them to the emailing list, the email list, and then you email them what you're up to, and then it's evolved onto Facebook, and then hey, I remember you, and then you've got the memory and the shared experience of a skiing holiday, and then, you know, whatever you experience together, that's your commonality. Yeah. So then that commonality, and again, I'm doing well, so I want you to do well. Yes. And then a rising tide lifts all ships.
100%. Yeah. So you've kind of just done that incrementally over.
Yeah. So it's maybe I've taken it for granted, but I chat to guys. There's a lot of positivity. I want you to do well, so that I can do well, so that we all do well and enjoy life.
It's interesting because, you know, I find that you're quite courageous in that sense. You are quite willing to reach out to people, whereas I think, and I'm speaking generally, but a lot of people are quite hesitant for, I suppose, many things: fear of rejection, fear of whatever. Is that just something that's inherent in your personality, or do you think it's...
Yeah, I think so. You know, you learn a lot from your parents hosting dinner parties and braais on the weekends, how they interact with their friends and randoms. Cheapers, there were random people that came to the house. Yeah. Who these people, mum? Who these guys, dad? Yes. You got to get to know them, know their name, interact with them. So it was probably ingrained in me from a young age, and also like I care.
Yeah, sure. I think that's an underlying key part of it is bringing across that you actually do care, because I think there's a lot of people, which brings me on to my next question, which is, you know, trying to establish trust today is a difficult thing because of the number of companies, individuals, etc. out there that are sort of in it for more for their personal gain than for the gain of the client or the customer. How do you know, in your business, establishing trust is obviously key in terms of guys going down the road with you. What do you think is key to that? Achieving that?
Communication, asking tough questions now up front, rather than having to battle them if there's an unforeseen incident. Yeah. So you tackle tough questions now. It's the communication, I guess. You're there for them anytime. You're always online, so you can't hide. Yeah. You want to resolve it as best you can. So if it's in your capacity, then you go and do it.
One of the things I think that you guys, between yourself and Dan, really do well is responsiveness, because, you know, depending on who you contact these days, you know, it's not always as responsive as you'd like it. But I think something which I've always admired about what you guys do is how responsive you are to when a client is needing something or wants to get in touch, or, you know, these days we always sort of tend to be last minuters and you need something straight away, and as Murphy's Law would have it, sometimes then, you know, you've got 10, 15, 20 people wanting something at the same time. So
yeah, it's true. It happens. But again, if you can manage the expectation, you get an email, you can see it's quite in depth. You might need to outsource some answers or feedback from an institution, and you know an institution is not going to work as smoothly or as quickly as you can. So, hey, I've got your email, acknowledge it. I'll get back to you maybe 3 or 4 days. Okay. Yeah. Which, you know, sets a precedent. Don't harass me every hour. Yeah. And then they'll come back. Okay, cool. But again, it's communication. Yeah. Managing the expectations.
Yeah. Scotty, you're a big sporting fan of the sports field.
Oh, too much.
Too much. I think there's a lot of lessons from the sports fields that one can take into the working world. Listened to Rake in one of our previous episodes on that topic, and it was interesting from the pool into the working world what the lessons were there. And in your case on the hockey field into into the working world. Speak to us about how team sport has helped you in that sense.
The idea of practices and training and discipline and a mentor and a coach saying to you, if you do this, this is the result. To me, that was straightforward and simple. So when I joined the industry, I said to the guys, I've got 7 years, how do I get there? By taking you through the steps and trusting the process. I got there after my first year. But I'm 20 rand out over an entire year from what I need. Wow, how predictable is that? So now that was a lesson in itself. So I thought, okay, well, commit to the process, trust the process. If you put a stake in the sand and say, right, there's my deadline, which for me was 7 years. 7 years, mom and dad are on zero money. That's a massive realization. And it hit home because I can't pay for that. But I know if I continue with what I'm doing, in 7 years I can. And then, 5 years after the dad's death, and you partner up with someone who dissected your investments because he is a specialist in investments. Well, hang on. Why don't you do all my investments? So now you're starting to specialize, which again comes back to my sport. You're a batsman. You can't bowl. You're a batsman. So stick to batting. Sure. You're a wicket keeper. That's a unique position. Stick to it. So those kind of specializations, I call it that, said, well, I know insurance better than most. And it's proven. So why don't I just do that? And that's where the partnership with Dan's come into play. He's the best at investments. I'm the best at insurance. So there we go. Then you've got someone who's the best administration office PA. Cool. She does that for us. You outsource the short-term stuff. Okay, cool. We've got a short-term. So now you're surrounded by a team, sports team of competent people.
What has it been like pre that decision to specialize and have guys do specific things, compared to now where previously where you had to do a lot of it yourself, and now you've got that support structure? What's the difference been like for you? What is a typical day felt like pre and post?
What's quite cool, because we're all on the same communication. We know what each other are doing. It's almost like you're surrounded by 4 or 5 PAs. Because you are the air traffic controller. You've got the relationship with the client, so you know who's working on what. But the client entrusts you to make sure that it happens. So you got, hey Dan, sort this out. Hey Shanice, sort this out. And at the company we've got different pillars. We've got a medical aid team. We've got a paraplanning team. We've got an investment team. So it's again.
It seems, and assuming here a bit of I suppose experience on our front, but it seems like once you get into that way of doing things, your quality of work is obviously just so much better as well. You're just purely through the fact that you have more time to focus on what you're best at. It just makes things that much more specialized. I'm interested to also know, I mean, you've had the pleasure and benefit of working and being surrounded by a lot of individuals who have done very well for themselves or are starting to do very well for themselves. I suppose quite a cross section of people. Have you noticed any common threads or common traits of people, within your client base that you go, I really want to be more like that, or any attributes of people or individuals that you really admire or that link to success in whatever field they might be in?
You're right, it's vast out there. You're dealing with so many social dynamics, different personalities, and it isn't a blanket approach. You do. But I'd say a common thread is we all share emotions. We all share love, we all share anger, we all share sympathy and empathy. That's the humanitarian way. So on that, I think there's a connection. You've got a story to tell. You've got a past. You've got a history. You've got baggage, different degrees of severity, and it's maybe your reaction to it. I think from my story, it's given me a scale of what's significant and what you can laugh off. What is really like petty, which isn't the right way, but it's my way. and I try to get that across, and I share it, and people share theirs. So maybe that could build up the trust. And then, you know, when you're introducing it to your business partner or to your wife or anyone, it's an extension of your reputation. So I won't just hand out willy-nilly contacts and that, because you want to be able to trust your reputation in someone else's hands.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, you've got to be careful with that, especially the world is a small place these days. It's
global citizens.
Absolutely. You know, what's also interesting is your path and your journey has meant that work and I guess the rest of life is quite closely intertwined. You know, your hours of work sometimes must be, you know, not perhaps as set as someone who's an 8 to 5. Is that the case, or have you managed to find quite a clear sort of work-life balance, or whatever the cliches that people like to use?
A day in the life, Monday to Friday.
Maybe that's a good way to look at it. What's a typical day in Scotty's?
Well, look, I think a massive commodity of this industry and what we do is the freedom of choice. I can choose to work as hard or as slack as I want to. It's ingrained in me that I need to do stuff, otherwise I'm going to get bored, which always happens over the festive season because there's no one to have coffee with. However, I like to get up early. I've got purpose, so get out and go and do it. Do a little bit of training in the morning because things happen in life, and I'm not going to do it in the afternoon or in the evening. You know, you've got the office on the iPad, so you've got all the forms, all the documents, all that you need for a meeting, whether it's a spontaneous meeting at a coffee shop, you bump into someone, oh, you know what, I need your ID. Don't worry, we've got it. Sort you.
But I mean, that also means that you're for the most part prepared for everything. I think that even though you travel light, you're always prepared in that sense, which is, I think, a lesson for a lot of people. A lot of people will go to meetings these days and think, you know, I don't need to prepare too much. But something I've always noticed about you is when you're at that meeting, you're focused on what that particular client or problem set might be, you know, which is, I think, not in scarce commodity these days.
Yeah, I tell you what, I engage 100% for that half an hour that we're together, or even if it is 5 minutes together on a particular topic, I engage because life happens and I might forget by lunchtime. So I do it there and then I know it's done because I'm accountable to you. You know, I've put my trust in you, you've put your trust in me, I'm going to make it happen. So I do it there and then, otherwise I'm going to forget. Yeah,
absolutely. So to continue the typical day in Scotty's life, and I guess that work-life balance, do you find that there's is there a clear distinction between when you're working and when it's time with the loved ones, or is it sometimes a bit of a compromise?
No, not necessarily. I think my life and my work are entwined. It's the same. I know some people might have a separate account on Facebook or a separate cell phone number for business and play. It's the same. I am who I am. You know, if I'm talking rugby with you, I'm talking rugby. If I'm talking cancer, I'm talking cancer. But it doesn't matter. I am Scott and you're Rob, and we are talking about different topics, and it's authentic. When I do go home, to me it is almost a sanctuary where I plug in and recharge. You know, I can turn off if need be, because I know within those four walls I peaceful, tranquil, dedicate the time to being a good husband.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's I like how you answer that, because I think a lot of people try and often give a politically correct answer, and I think the reality is that it's very difficult to be absolutely in one thing or absolutely out of another thing. You know, we are thinking of various things during the day, and you know, one can be preoccupied. So I think it's a nice way of looking at it. Talking about the year ahead and talking more on the personal level, to start with, we always ask this question of every guest we have to kind of get an insight into the personality. But if you had to go to one restaurant for the rest of your life, and you could only go to that restaurant, which one would that be?
Oh, I've I've had this question, what was your last meal on death row? And I know it. And it's been the same for many years. A fillet steak with pepper sauce, spinach and butternut, chips. And I think owing to that, there are a number of good restaurants. However, one restaurant at the moment would be Patina in Newlands. They've thrown in another side option of risotto, which complements the meal. Although I walk out like a stuffed pig because I'm so full. I eat it all. It's my death row meal. Yeah, so that's it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with a good steak and chips. I can certainly advocate for that. And as we look again to 2020 and the year ahead, what are the next big audacious goals for Scotty?
Well, look, there's two spheres here. There's the work side. I want to maintain that number one status, 3rd year running, hopefully. I know what I need to do in order to get there.
Speak to us, just about that accolade, because it's a run to be very proud of. Tell the listeners as to what you've achieved for the last 2 years.
Yeah, 2018, 2019. Well, look, since I've joined up with Dan, I only write risk business. I pass over the investments to him. So I'm only writing risk business. So, that was at the end of 2017. Then we got the AOK. So since then, that's all I do. I write risk business and advise on that. I advise on the investments. Dan manages that. So that's it. So 2018 was good. I saw the most people. Therefore, again, that predictable process. If you see the people, have enough conversations, eventually it becomes reality.
And in a formal sense, the accolade or the award is called? The award that you've achieved? Is it what is the body or the
the most insurance policies sold?
Yeah. That's amazing. And that's in South Africa, huh? Across the country.
That's across the country for Liberty and the Hereford Group.
That's something to be very, very proud of.
Yeah, I'm chuffed. But again, it's not about the recognition. It's about seeing the people, because that's the input. The output is the...
Yeah, that'll take care of itself.
Quite right.
And tell me, for someone who's coming into this industry, someone who, if they were starting underneath you, if there was someone who is kind of, you had 20 minutes, half an hour with, even less, what would be some of the key things that you'd say to someone like that who's really just doesn't have the experience that you've had so far?
I think the training hasn't changed. The training is exactly the same. Our business is about people, so you got to go through the training of how to relate to people, see the people, have the conversations. Again, that predictable process. The stats of if I see 10 people, or if I make 10 phone calls, how many people answer, how many appointments do you set? From those appointments, how many people say no, down to how many actually sign up. You filter that down. So I don't think that training's changed. Trust the process. In fact, this morning, one of our mentors, we're on a mentor group, suggested, well, here's a practical way of looking at your week. And you break up a Monday to Friday, hour by hour. Again, you can choose how hard or how slack you want to work. But these are the hours in a week. And let's fill in cooking your breakfast, having your shower, training, your smoke break, coffee breaks, your family time. Let's put all that in, because those are your distractions. And you'll still see on that calendar how much time is available to see clients. So why not fill it up? It's pretty straightforward and simple to me.
Yeah, I think this notion of productivity or how one gets there is interesting, because I think as human beings we're very good at finding justified excuses for not having seen as many people or being as productive as we can be. And it's an old saying that I love is, excuses always sound best to the people who are saying them. To someone else, your excuse is an excuse. So it's, I think that from every person that I admire that I've interacted with in business, it's always been a case of there are no excuses. It's what you can do, and it's up to you. It's up to you to make it or not make it. I don't think talent is as much of a requirement these days as what it might have been before. I think it's the ability to be resolute in your productivity. Like you said, cause and effect.
Cause and effect and attitude. I think attitude's a huge common denominator amongst anything.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at all the celebrities, you look at all the successful guys, no matter what country, it came down to attitude because they weren't given it.
Yeah. Look, as an entrepreneur, I suppose, and you're right as well, is you're going to get said to a no. You're going to get said to no a lot of times. And I think what I admire again about the process and the journey that you've been on is, I suppose, more no's in the earlier days than now. But that's when your real resolve comes through and your ability to stay on path and trust, as you said, the process. It's a lot of people, those no's justify changing tack to something completely different. So I think it's a huge feather in your cap of what the path that you've been able to maintain, even though there may have been a couple of no's along the way.
And that's fine. The belief is there. The longer you're in the business, you actually realize your worth and what you mean to people. You're not only just selling an insurance policy, you're a counselor. You're helping with all sorts of different things outside of your accredited competencies. I have no issue with the no's because that's cool. I've asked a question, you've answered it. What does bug me is that they're offering help and then they ghost. They don't say no, they don't say yes, they just hide. And you're like, just say no so that I can put it aside. Yeah. I can move on.
I think that's very fair. It's even if it's not the answer that they know that you want to hear, exactly. at least there's something that you can move forward from it.
Yeah.
I think that's a challenge which many of us, and I suppose in the world of being a supplier or a partner or whatever you want to call it, face, is that just wanting an answer. And sometimes we're as guilty of it, and the other side is we want the answer ourselves. But I truly believe that your attitude that you've shown and be able to maintain over these years has been a reason for your success. Because I think a lot of people, that deters them from pushing forward and keeping that productivity going. So sure. Hats off to you, man. Last question from my side is. What will 2020, if we're sitting here in December, what will have determined a successful year for Scotty?
I think it's outside of work environment, to be honest. Work is work, but it's entwined with life. I don't want to focus on the numbers and clients and policies and assets under management. My focus is actually the family side. My wife and I are very keen to have a child, so we're going to make sure that 2020 is our year to fall pregnant and have a child of our own. Can't wait to be a dad. So that's probably the one focus. Yeah. We've got some nice things in the calendar socially. We've got a couple of holidays, some offshore, some locals, which excite us. We've got a lot right on our doorstep.
Absolutely.
Little things, hey Rob, that I've jotted down. You want to cook a different meal once a month, something out of a recipe book. You want to spend a night in a hotel in your neighborhood just to experience that. These are the things I want to do. I want to do 10 trail runs. I want to be on the mountain. We've got it. Might as well use it. So these are little things that I just jot down, and guess what? Sometimes I get to them. Sometimes I read it in December 2020, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I forgot about that. However, it's happened.
Just through the process.
Subconsciously, it's happened because I've written it down.
Yeah, I fully.
It's weird, eh?
Yeah.
Look, that's how I found my wife. I wrote stuff down of what I was looking for, and it happened.
Well, there you go. I said the last question, but I do want to ask one more. We're in a situation right now, I guess, in South Africa where you've got quite a lot of rather pessimistic people or negative people. I believe that you're one of those optimists out there that will always see the glass as at least half full. What's your answer to walking past a group of people that you can hear are, not singing the praises of our country, or pulling it down at every possible moment? What's your take on us as a collective going forward this year?
You're right, negative narration out there. I don't know. I dislike it. I am optimistic about it. Looking and thinking that the grass is green on the other side, not necessarily. America's got their problems. The whole world's got their problems. Yes, ours is bad, but we're not the worst. Yeah. So embrace what we do have. Some people are so ungrateful. If you want to take this lifestyle that you lead here and emulate it elsewhere, you won't be able to, because you're not earning that currency. You're earning rands, you're spending rands, and it's affordable. So if you want to be negative, you want to slate South Africa, leave. But you know what? You're going to go to Canada and you're going to talk about the good old days in South Africa. They must go. Yeah. There's a lot of people coming here. I know some people coming out from England because our education systems are fantastic, private care, and it's cheap for them, even though we think it's expensive. Yeah. But again, it comes down to the numbers. The emotion is that you should stay. It's positive. We've got private sector that's good.
Yeah, I fully agree. Scotty, thanks as always. Thanks for your time, and as I've said throughout our chat, I think our listeners have an immense amount to learn from you. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses, but I think what has been awesome to watch from the sidelines is kind of how you've progressed and learned from those pretty tough things that you've been very kind to share with us. And I just wish you an absolutely phenomenal 2020, and looking forward to having more chats along the way and sharing these little nuggets of information. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Rob. Been a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
That's it for today, guys. If this episode brought you value, please do subscribe to the podcast series. And for more information on building your organizational culture, visit us at rcaconsulting.biz. We'll see you in the next episode.